over here on the island.
Right, that it's nice
Yeah,
out. Yeah.
gorgeous.
We were just doing some filming for the Music Heals Gala coming up, and yesterday, and we wanted to film some of the interviews outside, but of course it was like threatening to rain. So we ended up filming a lot inside in the studio, and actually also through my house. And so I said, I could use this whole entire like little excerpt if I ever wanted to sell my house. I'll just add this to the marketing real estate team, because I've gone to almost every room in my house to try to get different shots of for the interviews. It was hilarious, but it's too bad because today would have been a beautiful day to film outside.
Yeah.
Murphy's Law.
Such as British Columbia.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Don't like the weather, wait 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. Now, is Rob Calder still involved with Music Heals?
He is actually. He is the production. He manages all the talent, and one of our clients is performing at the gala, and so that's why they were filming. And so he's getting in contact with them to set all the rehearsal time, everything. Yeah.
Nice.
I think we can start.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
I'll put the video first.
Connectra creates opportunities for people living with disabilities by providing information, resources, and programming geared towards greater inclusion and quality of life. Check out some of the programs we offer through our online learning platform, Connect Together, including our Service Mondays, where we highlight a local organization or initiative. This month, you'll learn about programs with the Richmond Centre for Disability and Gambling Support BC. Tuesdays are for ABC Studios Art Therapy with Connectra. Wednesdays are Chair Yoga with Bobby Seal-Kavitsky. Thursdays are Adaptive Fitness with Ocean Rehab and Fitness. Fridays are Contemporary Improv Dance Classes with Janice Lawrence. Every third Friday is a growable presentation by the Disabled Independent Gardening Association. This month, we're talking squirrels in Stanley Park, so don't miss out on September 15th. Every third Monday is our Perspective series, where you'll hear from guest speakers on varying topics. Join us on September 18th to hear a discussion about navigating music with a disability. Save the date for our upcoming Accessible Community Forum on accessible healthcare in British Columbia on October 27th. Check our website for more information and to have your voice heard by filling out our survey. Check out our updated programs calendar on our website, connectra.org, or find us on Facebook at Connectra Society.
Welcome, everyone. Oh, thanks, Kauser. Welcome, everyone. My name's Graham Wyman, and I'm a program manager with the Disability Foundation. Thank you for joining our Perspective series today on navigating music with a disability. I'd like to welcome Esther Thane, Joe Coughlin, and Bryden Veinot as our speakers for today. And just to start us off, if you have any questions or comments, either please put them in the chat, or you can raise your hand and we'll get you to unmute. But to get us started today, I would just like to do a bit of a round table. And if Esther, maybe you can start us off just a bit about your position and what you do in the music industry.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you so much, Graham. Thanks for having me at this really important panel to discuss our topic today. My name is Esther Thane. I am a music therapist. I have specialized for, close to 30 years now, if I want to admit that or not, in autism, neurodiversity, and all special needs and diverse needs for kids, adolescents, and also spreading out to adults. We have a music therapy practice called ET Music Therapy, and we're kind of the leading music therapy practice here in the Lower Mainland that has specialized for probably the longest with neurodiversity. We have 2 studio locations, one in North Vancouver. We also have another studio outside or within the Pacific Autism Family Center building in Richmond. And it's really a cool space because it has a whole recording studio along with it. And both of our studios are very decked out with lots of different instruments, from harpsichord to electric drum kit to analog drum kit to lots of electric guitars and pianos, synthesizers, harps, you name it. We see clients of all ages, from, I think the earliest or the youngest we have is 3 years old to about 55 at this point. And we're big promoters of individuals being able to fulfill their fullest potential. Music is a huge outlet, as we know. Of course, as a music therapist, I'm a true believer in that, for self-expression, for development, whether it comes cognitively, physically, emotionally, socially, or communication-wise, being able to use music, because we know music is a very non-threatening language, and a language accessible to everybody, no matter what their ability level is, their support needs level, etc. I used to teach for probably I think if I can remember correctly, close to 15 years on faculty at Capilano University in our Bachelor of Music Therapy program. I'm a big advocate to try to do as much as possible in the community. We have a lot of ties with different charity organizations, different partnerships on how to bring music to the masses. So thanks a lot for having me.
Hey, thank you. Joe, maybe same question, but over to you.
Wow. That's a tough act to follow there, Esther. It's
Oh.
amazing what you guys are doing. That's fabulous. I'm a musician. I'm a singer. I've been a singer since I started singing when I was about 11 years old in the choir in Windsor, Ontario, and stopped when my voice changed at around 13. And I think I got reintroduced to the choir at church at about 16. And when, I started to develop my baritone voice, and then started playing music very shortly after that. I think I was about 14. Joined the concert band at the Assumption High School. The high school had a very good music program. And the next year, we got introduced to a guy named Gil Grizzuti, who was with the Buddy Rich Band, and he taught us how to play in the big band. So, and I was the only percussionist in the band that had a drum kit, so I got to play drums in the big band. So that's how I got introduced to jazz. I was about 15 when that happened. And then I had a rock band for about 10 years, and then got a record deal. I think it was 1980, I think, and moved to Toronto and did the Toronto scene for almost 20 years, and decided at about 40, I guess I was around 40 years of age, to come out to British Columbia because the weather was nicer. So I've been performing out here ever since, and putting records out. We just I celebrated 50 years in the music business as a professional last year, and we put my 9th album out, and I think I was interviewed by Graham for that release back in about this time of year last year, and it's still available.
Thank you very much, Joe. Yeah, no, if anyone's interested in hearing that interview, it is on the VAMS YouTube channel, which is named Reimagine Radio, and you can find all of our old episodes. But no, that one with Joe's, I believe it's a 2 or 3-parter, so lots of interesting stuff. Thank you, though, Joe. And Bryden, I will pass it off to you.
Yeah, thank you. Again, 2 tough acts to follow, I would say. Now, I'll echo what you said, Joe. But so yeah, my name is Bryden Veinot. I'm the program coordinator with the Vancouver Adapted Music Society here in our studio at GF Strong Rehab Center. Myself, I'm an audio engineer and music producer. I got my certificate from Nimbus Recording some years ago, and then have been with the Vancouver Adapted Music Society since January 2021, I believe, is when I started. So yeah, other than that, though, just been playing various instruments. I picked up the guitar when I was 8 years old, and then ever since I've kind of picked up bass and piano and drums and other stringed instruments as well. So yeah, that's pretty much my role in the community. I haven't been at it as long as you two yet, so hopefully one day I'll have a longer resume so I can catch up to you.
Just takes time, man.
It takes time, yeah.
Well, thank you very much, everyone, for giving your backgrounds. To start us off, I would love to just get an explanation and just to really clarify the difference between what music therapy is and what we do at VAMS. So, Esther, would you mind just letting our listeners know what kind of background, or sorry, rather, what music therapy entails?
Well, first of all, I have to say that what you guys are doing is music therapy. First of all, I'm kind of the camp that, you know, there's a lot of music therapists out there that are very protective of that job title. And yes, there's a lot of education that goes behind it, but the only reason why music therapy is successful is really because music is universal. I mean, there's a reason why every single culture, no matter what level they are at throughout all history phases, there has been this innate, intrinsic urge to express ourselves through the arts and through music. So I really feel that every single one of us do music therapy on some level on a daily basis. So, and I know what you guys are doing with your organization, and it's very, very therapeutic. You are really advocates of music therapy yourselves. When a person is putting on music to go for a run, to help pass the time, to get in shape, to invigorate themselves, when people listen to music when they're depressed, that's all music therapy. They're all different levels of music therapy. So the most basic, simplistic definition of music therapy, kind of for the books, is that we work on non-musical goals through music. So we are addressing any skill domain, any developmental level, but we're also, you know, so that includes, like I mentioned before, communication skills, physical skills, people who have gone through a brain injury or a stroke and they need rehab and they need to relearn how to walk or talk again, and to increase their prosody of gait, for instance, when they're walking. It all can be done through rhythmic entrainment, through melodic intonation therapy. I don't know if you guys know of Gabby Giffords. Many years ago, that senator from the US that was shot in her head, and she lost all form of speech. And really the primary rehabilitation tactic that was used with her was music therapy, because she adored show tunes and Broadway musical songs and had learned all of those previous to her traumatic injury. And so she actually learned how to speak again through singing those songs that she was very familiar with and loved. And the prosody, the flow of language, happened from singing and transferred over into talking. But music therapy isn't just working on skill acquisition or development. We're also looking at quality of life. Music therapy is very important when we talk about palliative care, and quality of life in people with Alzheimer's and dementia, to maintain that quality as long as possible through music. So I think it's, you probably, each of you could maybe list on one hand, not even two, but just one hand, how many people you've encountered in your lives that don't like music or that don't have an appreciation with music. Everybody has some sort of association with music. And because of that, that is one kind of very strong principle of music therapy, is that no matter who you are working with, whatever walk of life, individual, it's really important to use their preferred music. And because it's not going to hit home as hard. So speaking as somebody who was born and raised in classical music, but also love alternative music from the 80s, one thing I never gravitated towards was country music. So it was quite an eye-opener for me when I sat down the music therapy program and was told, if you have a client who loves country music, you have to do country music with them. So I think my appreciation for all types of music has really expanded as a result, because for that individual, they're going to light up more, and more areas of their brain are going to light up. You know, when we think about music in general, it is actually the only activity in the world, on this planet, that if you're actively making music, you are lighting up every single area of your brain, all of your lobe, your temporal lobe, your executive functioning, your occipital, everything, your emotional limbic area. And so we see that on MRI findings when someone is actively making music. So we know that the brain works always together in tandem, all of these different areas. And it's so beautiful to use it for self-expression, for rehabilitation, for skills, across every single different population and age group. And it's going to look different. The music therapy experience is going to look different depending on who you're working with, what their age level is, and their level of abilities in all different areas.
Yeah, the psychology behind music therapy, especially VAMS, was a part of the Music Care Conference last year in November.
Yes. Yeah, me too. Yeah.
And it was just fascinating to show like the actual statistics and like brain scans, or again, one thing that stuck with me is, again, having someone who's walking after going through a stroke or something like similar, and playing a metronome and seeing how that would actually help them be able to, you know, their consistent steps and not as shaky. So it is a very fascinating subject to see, again, hard statistics on that. Now, Bryden, I'll let you explain just around VAMS.
Yeah, totally. I mean, Esther, thank you for saying what you said. There's undoubtedly therapeutic aspects to what, you know, any kind of music program, right? There's going to be. But you nailed it with basically the intended outcome is that your goals might not be music oriented. You're just using music as the tool to get there. Whereas our intended outcome is produce a record or practice this section of a song so that next week we can move on to the next one. But yeah, definitely there are therapeutic aspects to it. I know like one of our clients, after recovering from a car accident, he said that coming to VAMS was one of the main reasons he was able to recover the way he did. So yeah, at the end of the day, it's just the intended outcome is the difference. I know once you started talking about brain scans, the lobes and the MRI, I was like, that is where we are not the same for sure. Definitely. I don't know if we've ever uttered those words in the studio before, but yeah, the main goal though with VAMS is that we like to treat it as just any other kind of studio that you might find anywhere in the world, any kind of recording studio, but we do try and see it through the lens of someone with a disability and what they may need. So whether that's adapted instruments or, you know, being that conduit for them, maybe they aren't able to play a certain instrument. They can instead produce and get other session musicians or myself to play. And it's really just about them being able to have a goal of what they want musically. And then we just try and facilitate that within the studio.
Yeah, no, thanks, Bryden. And I think, you know, one thing that both music therapists and what we do at VAMS is figuring out problem solving and to get the best outcome for our clients and to fulfill whatever musical journey or need they do have. Now, to just move on for a question for Joe specifically, I was wondering if you could tell our group how you got involved with VAMS and how you heard about VAMS.
Well, first of all, I would like to say that music was never therapy for me. It was a way to meet girls.
Genius, genius.
So there you go. But, you know, what was the question again, Graham? Sorry.
Just how, you know, you heard about VAMS and
okay.
got involved and maybe some of the things that you've seen throughout your experience with knowing Dave.
Yeah. Well, I was lucky. Before I moved out here, I was in Toronto hosting a television show for CBC called the Disability Network. So we were always looking for stories across the country that came to our attention. And sure enough, I had met Dave Simonton's father. He was the head of rehab medicine at Queen's University. And I had interviewed him on the show. And he said, I have a son who's a quad as well. And he lives out in Vancouver. And about 2 weeks after this happened, somebody in the studio where I was said, Joe, there's a phone call from Vancouver for you. And I picked up the phone. It's Dave Simonton. So I've known Dave for, it's got to be over 30 years now. And I was lucky enough to meet Sam when I first came out here too, with my role as the communications guy at the Office for Disability Issues out here back in 95, 96, I guess. So that's how I got introduced. And of course, I was, even though I live in Victoria, I was happy to be embraced by the Vancouver Adapted Music Society as a member. So I could come over and play some gigs in Vancouver. It's a lot of fun.
Love having you too.
Thank you.
No, we have to do that again sometime coming up here.
Yeah, I don't travel very much anymore. I've hit my 70th year this year, and my schedule for traveling is kind of slowing down. That's for darn sure. But I still enjoy playing, and there's enough good musicians here on the island that I actually played with in Toronto. They've all moved either back here or they've moved here, so it's kind of a nice reintroduction to me to some of those players as well here.
Mm-hmm. Well, this is kind of just a general question again for the group. I'm wondering, when you were either working with a client or approaching a new record, are there certain things that you would prep for? Maybe dealing, say, having a disability or working with someone with a disability. I know this is kind of a very open or generic question in the sense of every case is very unique, but how would you approach meeting a new client or approaching, say, writing a new record?
Well, I think from my standpoint as a music therapist, we always are trying to get as much information as possible to kind of preload ourselves before even meeting that individual. So that might mean having a phone call, a phone chat exactly about where the level of ability is, where the challenges are, or what kind of things do we need to do in order to adapt the instruments we have in the room to make them feel comfortable, make them feel successful in whatever music making they're doing. So that might also include completing an intake form to give us, again, as much information as we have so we can organize the room accordingly, make sure that there's enough space. If we're working with somebody, for instance, with cerebral palsy, we want to make sure that we know what side of their body they feel more confident utilizing, so that we can organize and angle all of the instruments accordingly so that they have that accessibility right off the bat, because we want to really empower them as much as possible in the actual environment that we're in, and increase that comfort level, for sure. And then look at where do they feel like they can express themselves the most. Again, these are things like, what is your music preference? So, I noticed on Bryden's shirt, he's got Nirvana on his shirt. And, we work in a lot of schools, for instance, working with high risk youth. And these are kids that, a good day they're coming to school. Maybe they're getting 50-60% attendance at the school, the high school, and that's like a great day. And we've started doing rock bands in the school district, in a couple of different school districts, and specifically in these schools that are, these are children, not children, they're teens, and they're coming from really compromised families. Some of them might have fetal alcohol syndrome themselves. They might have parents who have substance abuse disorders. They might have attention deficit. And again, meeting them in the music, and for some reason, there's a whole resurgence of Nirvana for younger kiddos. They really, and I know it's easy because it's a lot of it's, just a few chords. So it's easy for them to play and feel successful instantly, right? So I think meeting them there, wherever anybody is at, whether that means a physical disability, a mental disability, where can you help support them as much as possible, and meet them, like we're just, tickled pink because since we've been starting the rock band, the attendance at the school is like 75% on the days that we're there doing rock band, and the kids are running across the parking lot to get to school as fast as possible. So I think it's knowing the individual before you start and setting up that space, the environment as best as you can to help support them, and then to be wanting to meet in the music that they love. So really kind of common sense things, but do require some prep.
Mhm.
And goal setting as well, or?
Goal setting is something we do way down the line. And when I say way down the line, it might be 2 or 3 different sessions into the experience. You have to spend time just establishing rapport first, gaining trust and safety in the environment. And, we're doing constantly informal assessment in the session, so that by the 3rd or 4th session, we kind of have an idea of what are the goals going to be. And if we're working with somebody who's an adult or a teen, this is a collaborative process. We're not just coming in and writing on our little, medical notepad, this is what goals we're going to work on. If it's somebody who, we have a lot of, we've got a client, for instance, who had a brain injury when they were 4 years old, and they're in their mid 40s now. And their goal is to come to sessions and just jam. That's all they want to do. They don't want to write anything new. They don't want to do any songwriting or improvisation. They just want to sing. They want to sing. They want to play the drum kit, and they want a supportive music therapist that can help maintain the music underneath, while they just have a great time in that hour and just have that outlet, that cathartic release and outlet for emotional expression. Also to work on like just the dexterity and the sequencing that needs to occur when you're playing on the drum kit. So all of these things kind of just fall into place naturally and indirectly because they're having a good time, and that's something I've always, kind of a philosophical comment or statement I've always said is that anybody is going to integrate any new learning about themselves or their body at a deeper level if it's coming from a place of inner motivation and curiosity.
No, that's a great outset or mindset to have when entering any section. Now, Joe, I'd love for you to tell the people listening just how you approach, that you've done your 9th album. If you were when you're looking to do your 10th album, how would you approach navigating getting the production and recording done with that?
Basically making sure that the studio has an accessible bathroom. The most important things. And I've recorded a couple of times over in Vancouver, mostly at the warehouse, and that's a really nice studio. I love that.
Beautiful.
And luckily I had a kind of an introduction to that back in, was it 2013 when we did the strong sessions? So we recorded all of that stuff over there. So that's where we did the album last couple of Julys ago. So it's just having an awareness of what you're going to get into. Because I've had a lot of people, advanced teams come up and say, oh yeah, we're totally accessible. And then you get there and they're not. So that's kind of a drag. So you always have to do a little bit more planning than most others do. And I even put a 4-foot portable ramp in the back of my van in case, there's no access to a small stage. So I can do that as well. So it's just about, doing a lot of pre-planning and knowing what kind of venue you're going to get into. Most of the jazz clubs across this country are either upstairs or downstairs. And, luckily Frankie's over in Vancouver is completely accessible. And over here in Victoria, Herman's Jazz Club is accessible too. So, it's getting better. I have seen some, improvement over the years, but we could certainly there's a lot of clubs that are still not very accessible to people who use mobility devices. That's for sure. So just be aware what you're getting into.
No, that's a great point, Joe. That actually, before I jump to you, Bryden, I'll just give a little bit of a background for what we've experienced with VAMs and just in venues, where I always seem to find that venues, it's never a 100% accessible. There's always, maybe the stage is on the floor. However, the closest accessible washroom is 3 storefronts down. And Bryden, I won't, because you're on the panel, I'll let you maybe explain what we encountered with the Harmony Arts Festival, which was a great event, but this is just a little example.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, this is pretty common for a lot of venues too, is that the accessibility focus is for the attendees and people in the audience. So for those of you who don't know, VAMS actually performed with one of our artists, Jeff Stanfield, at the Harmony Arts Festival early in August. And it took place right by Ambleside Beach, and it was beautiful, easily accessible for any kind of mobility device if you were in the audience. But as performer, though, they had these big stages that were about 4 feet high, which is really high for a wheelchair, especially with the type of incline that you need for it to be safe. So to adapt, we as VAMs had to bring a couple of things called roller ramps, which are like big metal ramps that you can roll up and take around in our van, which is very cool. But that was pretty much the only way that we were able to perform at this venue, is that if we brought our own ramp. But fortunately, when we got there with the ramp, the people that were running the event actually realized, oh no, we actually need to be more accessible than we thought. We need to make the stage accessible. So they actually immediately got some funding and bought a couple roller ramps for their own purposes for years to come. So it was nice to see that we made a bit of a difference, but it is tough for venues to fully understand what is truly accessible. Like Graham said, yeah, you might hit a lot of things on the list, but 1 or 2 things missing makes it not accessible, whether it's like a bathroom or not close enough to a bus stop, or if there's like a 2-inch lip on the front door, you've just totally caused it to be inaccessible, where that's a small lip, but for a wheelchair you just can't get in there. So that's kind of the idea around like the live event planning, I guess, with VAMs. But to go back to that former question about just kind of preparing for clients, very similar to what Esther said, you just try and get as much information about the client as possible beforehand, whether you're talking with them directly, with their family, like parents or brother or sister, maybe it's with their recreational or occupational therapist. You try and get as much information as you can to start, and then you also try and have an understanding of the whole community. So fortunately, VAMS is part of the Disability Foundation, and because of that, I've been exposed to a lot of the community, various disabilities, and what adaptations and what we need to do to make things accessible for those specific disabilities. So just having that knowledge over time, and as time goes on, you learn more about what people may need. But the other thing too, I think, is we never try to do everything, right? A big point of the studio is that you want to give those clients the autonomy that they're doing the music themselves. It's not them just coming in telling us what to do. It's they're doing everything to their capacity, and then at that point they'll say, hey, I need help with this. So it becomes more of a collaborative thing than just coming in and being told what you're able to do. That's not what we want to do. We want the client to say, hey, this is what I can do. Can you help me with this? So, and again, over the sessions, you learn what they need, maybe some new adaptations, and yeah, just getting comfortable building that rapport. I mean, as much as it is just a music studio and we do music lessons, it's, we're building like a community and a bit of a sense of family here too. So it's a very important thing, just to be aware of people's needs and to let them express themselves and not, totally take over for them.
Well said, Brian. I'll just ask, does anyone have any questions before we move on with some of my stock ones? And if not, we'll just continue on. All right. So again, another question for the group. What do you think we as a society could do better to improve not just the things that we briefly touched on with, say, accessible venues, but whether it relates to music therapy, whether it relates to what we do at VAMS, or Joe, in your career, what do you think we as a society could improve on outside of the just strict what we spoke about with the accessibility of venues? Is there anything that comes to mind?
I'll start really quick and then we can move on. But I think the main one is just the attitudinal barrier. That's just for some reason in place. People not realizing, able-bodied people not fully understanding what people with disabilities are, capable of. And more often than not, it's just as much. If you close your eyes and you listen to a song, you can't tell whether they have a leg amputated or if they've had a stroke or any kind of disability. It's just music, it's just sound. And if you're able to do it, then what difference, right? So I think just the attitudinal barrier, and I know it goes further than just music. It's employment and school, education, everywhere. It's unfortunate, but I think that's kind of the main one, is just people not understanding that we're all just people. We're all doing the same stuff here. So I think that's the main one, if anyone wants to expand on that or other comments.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head with that one for sure, Bryden. And it all boils down to, it does boil down to accessibility and education and training. And at the end of the day, it again boils down even further down to money. And, I know it's something that we always just complain about in life. If you're a musician, there's not enough money given to the arts, and we see so many, already at the primary level, so many scholastic systems reducing music classes and not even having a music teacher, or not seeing the efficacy for why music is important in everybody's lives, and providing the funding for that, and the funding for programs like VAMS, or funding for music therapy, to look at these as viable options for people when they're working through something in life. And also having, just that accessibility in general for all musicians, no matter what their level is, what their ability is, that we don't have to differentiate, I love Special Olympics, but there's also something a little wrong with the fact that we have to designate Special Olympics too, in a way. Like it's like Bryden said, we're all the same. We all, whether where you are at in your life, we all love music. And I think we will eventually evolve as society when we can drop all of those labels in general, right?
Joe, I'll go to
Yeah,
you.
I remember once I was doing a radio interview back quite a few years ago, and the producer came up to me. She said, "What do you want to be called? Disabled, handicapped, crippled? What's the proper term?" I said, "Joe is really," those kinds of things. So there's always that kind of stuff that still comes up, and well, he's pretty good for a disabled guy. I really don't want to have to listen to that kind of stuff anymore either. But I guess when you get to be my age, you don't really give a crap about that stuff anymore. You just keep doing what you do. It's it was the Marine philosophy. If you come up against a barrier, You either go around it, under it, over it, or right through the middle of it. And that's kind of my approach to life. And, I just, there's so much, I think it's the joy of collaboration that I enjoy the most about being a musician, is that I get to work with other people who are equally, if not better than I am. And that's always been my goal, is to work with people who are better than you are, because that's what makes you better. And I continue to do that. And people, I've just did an interview a couple of weeks ago in Philadelphia, and somebody said, well, you play with really good people. Well, why would I want to play with people who aren't that good? It just doesn't make any sense to me. I want to, a really good rhythm section and good soloists and people who know how to improvise, but also know how to behave as a professional musician. And I think this is, we used to call it Vince Lombardi time. And I know people don't remember who Vince Lombardi was, but he was a very famous football coach for the Green Bay Packers back in the 60s. And he used to say, Vince Lombardi time is you show up early to show that you're enthusiastic about things. And to be a professional musician, I want to get to the venue an hour before the show goes. So all of my stuff is together. I got a good warm up for 20 minutes. Because if I don't warm up for 20 minutes, I get hoarse after about the first 3 songs. So you got to be prepared. That's the most important thing I can think of, is just be prepared. And it takes a lot of work. They said, what is it? 10,000 hours of practice to get to a point where you may have some proficiency. And hopefully, if you have enough talent, that actually works out at the end. And it all comes down. I remember talking to people at the Canada Council about this. How do you get a grant? Well, basically, it's not the paperwork that counts. It's what was on the audition tape. And if there's something good there, they'll listen to it. And, that's great. And, what's happened in the modern day, too, the business has really changed in the 50 years I've been in it. That's for sure. And I had to adapt to all the stuff that was going on. I remember meeting Craig Northey from the Odds through when we did the Strong Sessions a few years ago. Well, it's 10 years ago now. And we were yakking about the way we used to have to ship a master tape across the country. That was insane. Now I do it on the internet, and I can do mixes on the computer at home. I mean, I have this whole studio behind me. I record in my front room. This is my studio. And, if people send me a track, I have people who send me orchestra tracks. I just lay down the vocals here. It's great. The way the technology has grown, anybody can participate in it these days. And I think that's one of the themes here, is how do you navigate through the music business with a disability? Well, the tools are out there now. You just have to learn how to use them.
Mm-hmm.
That's a very fair point, Joe, around the barrier of having to actually go into a studio versus being able to do the work at home.
Sure.
Can I actually highlight something you said, Joe, that definitely resonated with me, was when you were saying that the interviewer saying, oh, should I say you're disabled or this, that? And you're like, no, Joe, for all of our musicians and any musician with a disability, your identity isn't your disability. Your identity is you as a musician. And I think that goes back to that weird barrier that's just kind of unwritten in place, is when you see a person with a disability, a physical disability makes it more obvious, but when you see someone, you're like, oh, your first impression of them is that they're disabled, not that they're a musician, or that there's obviously way more to them than just someone with a disability. So it's important to put disability kind of secondary to who they are, right? Even tertiary, further than that, right? Again, disability isn't your identity, so.
Separating from stigma, for sure.
Yeah.
Now, Dave, I see you have a question.
Oh, yeah. Well, actually, just to build on the point you were just making, we had a very similar experience with our Abilities Business Co-op that we ran under Connectra for many years, where, a lot of the people who had, services or products to offer, very much, while they joined our co-op because of its supports, where we could help people, where they struggled with their business goals, as a result of their disability, many of course didn't want to, feature or piggyback on their disability as the reason to frequent their business, and actually resisted the temptation to market specifically because you were supporting a person with a disability in their business. But actually, the reason I raised my hand before was actually to just build on Esther's point, where she was talking about the monetary aspects of disability in music, and how that and very much it ties together with what we were talking about at accessible venues, in that the two things are quite incongruous. When you own a club or a bar or a restaurant, one of the things that people have to do to make it profitable is to squeeze in as many seats as possible, and of course that's contrary to accessibility, and to having nice aisles, and and making things physically accessible, and definitely, I mean, it's great that we have venues now like Frankie's and stuff that are a little more modern and able to be made accessible. But yeah, so many of the small places that would be great if VAMS musicians could participate in and perform at, just can't, because of the physical structures and layouts of the venues themselves. So it's it's unfortunate, and hopefully, well, something that does appear to be changing a bit, but yeah, definitely one of the things that makes music and in particular live performance challenging from an accessibility standpoint. And that's why it's great that we've got, at least on the recording side, so much in other words, you don't have to find an accessible music studio anymore. You can do it right in your own living room, which is wonderful. Yeah.
Wait, don't give away all the secrets. We got to have clients too.
All right. Exactly.
Well, no, they still need help, and and one of the things too, about music therapy. I mean, I know why while VAMS doesn't promote the therapy aspects of the program. I mean, definitely, I know how some of our clients, obviously, their participation with VAMS and taking part at the studio is in part of their physical rehabilitation, whether it's dexterity issues that somebody's working on the keyboard or a guitar for, or yeah, I'm sure any number of other examples. I know that there must be some therapy, some physical therapy going on in the studio as well, which is wonderful, as well as, of course, the thing that we all benefit from music, which is the mental health contributions that it makes to calming you down when you're upset, or yeah, just celebrating something wonderful with a tune that really hits you in the heart, things like that. Music is an amazing thing. Anyway, but let me leave it to you guys to talk more. I've said enough.
Well, I think what you're saying, David, is so important too, and I think that is kind of this common thread between everything that we're doing musically with people that we work with, or musically for yourself, whether you're recording or you're doing therapy or you're assisting and supporting. And I think we're more similar than we are different. And, when I was talking about that difference of what we do in music therapy and what VAMs are doing, there is so many overlaps there. And my professor back in the day, when I was first taking my initial music therapy training, would say, when you're working with kids, the biggest difference between music education and music therapy is that music education focuses on a product and music therapy focuses on the process.
Mhm.
However, we often have a product too at the end. So you guys are focusing on a product, but you're actually getting tons of therapy with your clients through the process. They're gaining self-image, self-confidence, self-awareness, self-expression. And you've got a product, and sometimes we've got a product too, like I was mentioning before we started this entire series today about that. We just were doing some filming at one of our studios with Music Heals, who is a big charity organization that really supports music therapy throughout the Lower Mainland and BC, and actually beyond BC. And one of the clients that they were filming was a young man with autism, who is now close to 20 years old. And he started with us when he was 2 years old. And he's been with us for almost, like 18 years. And in the initial days, it was all about him being able to lose his rigidity, his ability to have better eye-hand coordination. First of all, he's a musical savant. So, he'd come through the room and would yell at me. I was his original therapist when I wasn't playing, if my instruments weren't tuned in A440 perfectly. And, he was like, that's not an F, that's an F sharp, what you're playing. And he would have a huge tantrum and not be able to regulate himself. And so those first few years, we were working through all of his skill development. But now, why he's going to be performing at the next Music Heals Gala is really about that it's come full circle. And now what we do in our sessions is supporting him musically, because this is what he wants to do as a career. And it's how do we support him and prop him up to help move him forward in his career path. He wants to be a singer-songwriter. He wants to produce. He wants to maybe do mixing and editing. He's not sure, but he knows that music is what he lives and breathes. And so it's kind of come full circle for us, because we're not working. We are now we're doing a little bit more of what FAMS is doing, is we're getting the therapeutic process through the focus on the product. The kid is nuts right now about Joni Mitchell, and he wants to learn and perform every single Joni Mitchell album that's out there. And what we're trying to do is open up his rigidity to that he can vamp himself and improvise and move it to a different space, that it doesn't need to be exactly like, that recording or that version or that performance that some piece of music was done, and that he has to emulate it exactly, that he can bring himself to the equation and add his own diverse way of expressing himself in that song. I mean, we know, that happens all the time, where sometimes you don't really like the original, you like somebody who's done the cover of something way more, and they've had like, I'm nuts right now, and I know we're probably going off of topic and we don't have much time left, but I have to mention one thing, because my son and I are going to a Coldplay concert that is in Vancouver next Saturday. And of course, my ultimate favorite Coldplay song is Fix You. And the first time I heard, and I'm sure you guys all know, of course, Jacob Collier, and he's just a brilliant human being and a brilliant musician. And his version, if you don't know his version of Fix You, I highly recommend listening to it with earbuds in, so you get the full experience, really as loud as you possibly can on YouTube, and watch his version of it. And it's one of those things where, people take the inspiration from one musician and you create your own version of it, that sometimes is just, it's like a novel. Everybody adds their own chapter, right?
Mhm.
And it becomes a conversation in music. And I think that's the beautiful thing about music.
Yeah,
Tony Bennett said, God rest his soul, he said, if you copy one person as an artist, that's stealing. But if you copy a whole bunch of artists, that's research. That's my favorite line. And people say, well, who influenced me? Well, a lot of different artists, and I still listen to them, I still love them, but they kind of planted the seed. But when, especially amongst jazz artists, we have to bring our own little piece to it. So it's just echoing your part, Esther. You got to bring your own personality into this kind of stuff, because that's what makes you a success. It makes you happy too.
Mhm.
Um, Just before, sorry, Brian, you want to say something?
I'm itching to ask Joe what adaptations are there in your space there, because I see the piano there is angled, so it's easier to play. I'm just wondering, like,
Yeah,
or maybe take us through what you've done to make your space accessible for recording.
it's my space.
Yeah.
So of course it's going to be accessible.
Yeah.
So I can hit everything with ease here. I just got, it's on the software I have is Pro Tools. It's on my iPad Pro, and I have a Focusrite that hooks up the microphones and the pianos. Everything goes through that little process. So it's a Focusrite. I think I got a 2i or whatever it's called.
Mhm.
And that's the stuff that integrates the instruments into the software and the computers. It's great. I love it. I love having it. And it's, the piano is there for the piano players who come over and play for me. I don't play. I just sing.
Okay, nice.
And that's a Warham Audio U87 behind me. And I got some AKG studio headphones there too, which are very nice. Studio reference headphones.
Nice.
Mm-hmm. And, when I send a sample, I usually record flat here. And that's mostly what audio engineers want to hear, is that it's a flat signal. And then they do whatever enhancements they want to do in sweetening in the studio. So that happens. But I do radio spots here, and, people want, I just did one for Hawaii National Public Radio in Honolulu. So I had to say aloha. It was kind of cool. This from another big island in the Pacific Ocean. That's what I said.
Well,
So these are the kinds of things I can do in the studio here. It's great.
Nice.
Well, thank you for taking us through your space, Joe. I just, again, want to be aware of time. So before we wrap up, I would just love for everyone to maybe let who's ever listening know how they could potentially get involved with their organization, and or listen to their music. And Joe, maybe we'll start with you, just around what.
Yeah, I'm on every streaming service. I think on Spotify, I got about 11,000 monthly listeners now, and all of my whole catalog is up there. I got 9 albums on that service. I'm on iTunes, Apple Music, Pandora, Tidal. We're in all those services, and I got a Bandcamp site too, Joe Coughlin on Bandcamp. And if you want to buy product from me, that's all available. My website, joecoughlin.ca, is, you can find out where we're playing next and all that kind of stuff, and some reviews. So it's a lot of fun. I'm enjoying my life.
Oh, great. And can't wait to hear the next record.
Well, we're in the planning stages for that right now. I was just talking to, I got a call a little while ago from Mel Torme's piano player in Philadelphia, John Colliani, and we're doing something right now. So, and of course, the pressure from my record label is, let's do a Christmas record. Well, maybe, because I got to get number 10 out, and then maybe I might call it quits, but I don't think so.
Hopefully not.
Yeah, musicians don't retire; we die.
No, that's right.
Yeah.
Thanks, Joe. Esther, over to you.
etmusictherapy.com. You can go to our website. There's tons of different videos all peppered throughout our website. You can put in a contact us form to reach out to us. Usually set up then. As executive director, I set up a little phone chat. We chat for a half hour, figure out what makes the most sense, what you're interested in, get those background, nuggets about the individual, and then try to schedule different session times. We're on all socials. We've got a page on Facebook, page on Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn. That's where we stop, though. We haven't gone down the TikTok path or anything.
Not going there.
I don't get it.
We haven't migrated yet to VAMs. I don't know if we will. We'll stick with the YouTube channel for now.
Yeah, I'm not ready for that.
All right. Thank you, Esther. And sorry, and I hope I'm pronouncing your name right, Asia. But yeah, I did see your question. So I think hopefully we've answered that. And if you, perfect. Okay, great. Bryden, over to you.
Yeah, just to get in contact with VAMs, I put it in the chat there but for anyone else listening, the best way to get in touch with us would be either at our website, which is www.vams.org, or directly email me at info@vams.org, so info@vams.org. Yeah, and you can just say what your interest is in the program, whether it's for a lesson or for recording, or maybe you want to get involved in some live music opportunities. So emailing us would be the best, and then we can kind of set up an orientation session from there to see how the fit is, and actually get in person and try a couple instruments out maybe that you once thought you weren't able to play. So yeah, that would be the best way.
Okay, great. Well, everyone, thank you for participating today. I mean, I always learn something whenever, and this, I get a like-minded group together. So no, thank you so much for your time, and have yourselves a great rest of your week.
Peace.
All right.
Awesome.
Take care, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
everyone. Bye.
Thanks, Kaiser.